Less than 48 hours before she delivers the government's throne speech, sources are revealing new information to CBC about Julie Payette's behaviour in some of her former jobs. And that information is raising new questions about the due diligence the government did before appointing Payette to her current post as Governor General. The CBC's Ashley Burke joins me with more on this. Hi, Ashley. So what are these sources telling you?
Well, I spoke to 15 people, including former board members, employees, current employees, spanning 3 jobs that she had, including her past 2 positions. Before she was appointed to one of the highest offices in the country, Julie Payette ran the Montreal Science Centre. And the story there is remarkably similar. We've heard in the news before already at the National Post, Radio-Canada, reporting that Julie Payette claims she created a toxic work environment, similar behaviour that we saw at Rideau Hall. But we've now learned from sources is that Julie Payette, at the time, she left at a time when she was amid complaints, and as well, Canada Lands, the Crown Corporation that is in charge of this museum, it gave her a severance pay of about a year of her salary. So sources estimate that's around $200,000, and that was to quietly leave when she resigned. It was a way for them to prevent any sort of reputational damage or harm to both Canada Land Company, but also the Port of Montreal, these 2 parent companies overseeing this museum. Now, that same year, Julie Payette was also a member of the Canadian Olympic Committee. She was a board member, and there was also troubles there, according to sources. There was 2 incidents that were reported to HR that were investigated, including verbal harassment. One of the cases happened at the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. Sources claim that Julie Payette berated and screamed at a young female employee to the point where she was reduced to tears. And the sources claim that it was over the fact that Julie Payette had to wait for a vehicle to pick her up at an event at the Olympic Games too long. She was with her son, and they told me that she was on the side of the road and had complained and called it ridiculous and unacceptable that she had to stand there waiting for so long, breathing in the pollution there. Now, she was asked to apologize after that, but then there was a second complaint. And in that case, that happened in December of 2016, there was another claim that someone was in a meeting with Julie Payette, that she overstepped her role as a board member, and that she told that individual, threatened that she could fire them because she was upset she didn't have answers at her fingertips. So those are 2 complaints at the Canadian Olympic Committee alone that were looked into at the time. After that, the committee had a conversation with Julie Payette, according to sources, and she did not return for a second year. She did not apply to return for a second year on the board.
So I think that most people listening would have probably the same first question as me, and it's one that throughout your reporting many people have had. How much of this was the government aware of when they vetted her appointment or when they ultimately decided on it?
Well, sources from both of these companies, they both said that the Prime Minister's office or the Liberal Party, no one from the government ever got in touch with them and asked for a reference. And that if they had, they could have raised some red flags about either her management style or interpersonal skills without revealing specific details, obviously, about these confidential HR complaints. And as well, it's important to note that the press secretary for Julie Payette today, this afternoon, has come out and said that she denies any allegations that there were ever any complaints of former workplace complaints have ever been lodged against Payette, and said that her record as a member of dozens of boards over the years has been exemplary. But neither the Canadian Olympic Committee or the museum could confirm that because they said it privacy issues. They can't comment on these kind of personnel issues. Now, when it comes to the Prime Minister's office and this vetting process, the sources we spoke to really questioned it, and as well, they brought up this committee that Stephen Harper had in the past, where he had an advisory committee where they selected the Governor General using that. That's something that Justin Trudeau opted not to do this time and chose his personal selection. One person I spoke to, an expert at the Institute for Crown Studies, said that, you know what, it's not a time-honored tradition. She can understand it's not a big deal not to use that, but said that clearly this vetting process failed. Take a listen.
The process that was used was evidently not entirely adequate. It didn't uncover some things that ought to have been known. If they did indeed know those things, I would have described them as a deal breaker.
The Prime Minister's office, when we asked, wouldn't say what they were aware of, if they were aware of why Julie Payette left these past 2 positions, but did say there is a range of factors that go into selecting a Governor General, and it's done with appropriate due diligence.
Speaking of the Prime Minister, as I mentioned in the introduction to you, we're less than 48 hours away from the throne speech. The Governor General will deliver that speech. Obviously, it's something that the Prime Minister has had a major part in writing, and of course, the speech will put forth his ideas and his government's ideas for the fall agenda and for the agenda that they plan to pursue. I know you've been speaking to people about how the dynamics of that with the Governor General and the Prime Minister might work. What have they been telling you?
Yeah, many have described what they're expecting to see as perhaps an uncomfortable situation, an awkward situation. You know, the Governor General is always at the center of this ceremony, but never well under such controversy. And Governor General, while they deliver the speech and the Prime Minister's office writes it, they can also add in an introduction, like a preamble to the speech as well. Normally it's a couple paragraphs, it's about an anniversary, and it's usually a couple, just a small section, and it's rare. But last year, Julie Payette added 11 to 12 paragraphs. So many people, including constitutional experts, are looking closely to see what could she add to the speech? Could she make a nod to any of the controversies, try to defend herself in any even small way, indirectly, in the speech from the throne? And it's interesting timing because Justin Trudeau, before all of this came out, and earlier this month, said that Julie Payette was an excellent Governor General. And many suggested that he came out and said that after, a month-long silence of publicly defending her to perhaps ease the tension and any awkwardness that might exist on Wednesday.
Well, we'll see on Wednesday. Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate your reporting as always. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.